Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham Dhammam Sangham Namasami. Welcome, dear friends, to this Wednesday night Sutta program at the Empty Cloud Monastery. We have been looking into the Satipatthana Sutta for the past few weeks, and we've come to the point of looking at the third of the foundations of mindfulness, observing the mind. And in connection to that sutta, I thought of reading you the poetry in the Dhammapada in the chapter about the mind. The mind is the citta. It's going to come out in this reading that the mind is something that can be tamed, can be cultivated, and can be developed. And in this way, the mind is it's a transition from the first two of the foundations of mindfulness. The body is treated pretty much as a part of the first noble truth, an aspect of dukkha, something that one must accept, that you have the karma to take the birth in a human body, and then you have what's involved in obtaining a human body. Now, of course, it is possible to cultivate and develop one's body, but I don't know if I could find in the sutta where it tells you that you should build up the strength of your body as a way to liberation. Instead, one should see with wisdom the nature of the body as it is, and that's the important part. And likewise with Vedana, the three kinds of feeling, it's said that the feeling is something that is the fruit of the previous choices that a person has made, which will have created both your situation, whether you're surrounded by things that are pleasant or things that are unpleasant, and also by virtue of your previous choices, you will be endowed with a certain underlying tendencies. So there might be a underlying tendency towards aversion, and if you have that tendency, you will experience a lot of things as being unpleasant. And likewise with greed and ignorance and the other two kinds of feeling. So the training with feeling is not that you're seeking to cultivate pleasant feeling, but rather that you're seeking to be to have insight into the nature of feeling, so that you are able to first to be equanimous and tolerant towards the different kinds of feelings, and then so that you would have the wisdom to see, once you see the nature of the impermanent and selfless nature of feelings, then you can see the unpleasant in the pleasant, the pleasant in the unpleasant, and you can easily change and transform the feeling that you experience according to how you see it. But when we come to the mind, the way it's described in the Satipatthana Sutta is really pointing to it's a kind of like a barometer or a measurement if you wanted to evaluate how you're doing on your progress on this Noble Eightfold Path, how you're doing with the third noble truth. The way to the end of the suffering is to be developed. And so then you put in the effort to develop your path. And then when you come to sit in mindfulness, then you can, you're like the teacher taking the scoring the exam to see, how you're doing. You understand whether the mind has greed still or is free from greed, has hatred or is free from hatred, has delusion or free from delusion, is constricted or scattered, is expanded or unexpanded, is unsurpassable or surpassable, is gathered in samadhi or not gathered in samadhi. You know whether the mind is free or whether the mind is not free. And so those evaluations are, I think, in my opinion, are not given that just with the idea that if you understand this mind is not free, that then there's nothing to be done except to understand with wisdom that the mind is not free and to become disenchanted with the mind. That's not what's encouraged with this. If you know that the mind is not free, then you know you still have some work to do in taming the mind, in training the mind, in protecting the mind. But then if you know that the mind is free, or if you know that the mind is gone beyond greed, hatred, and delusion, then you can be happy and satisfied to know that that you've come to the fruit, the positive result of the effort that you've made along this path. And then you can just continue with your practice, being content and happy with the success that's happened so far. So with that introduction, I'll come over here to the chapter on the mind in the Dhammapada verse. This is from 33 to 43 in the Dhammapada. Unstable and unsteady is the mind, difficult to protect and restrain. The wise straighten it, like a fletcher straightens an arrow. Like a fish pulled from its home and thrown on dry land, the mind thrashes about, struggling to escape Mara's realm. So we've been on retreat. I think all of us know how unsteady and unstable is the mind, how difficult it is to restrain it. But this sutta is telling us that it is possible to straighten the mind. The mind is fast-moving and hard to subdue, landing wherever it wishes. It is good to train it. A trained mind brings happiness. The mind is very subtle and hard to see, landing wherever it wishes. The wise protect it. A guarded mind brings happiness. So we have the trained mind and the guarded mind. I'm going to circle back to these ideas later on. At the very beginning of the Anguttara Nikaya, there's a sort of short suttas in the ones where the Buddha says, there is one thing, O monks, which causes more misery and suffering than any other thing. And what is that? It's the unguarded mind. The unguarded mind causes the greatest suffering. And then it gives the opposite. There's one thing which gives the greatest happiness for humans, and that's the guarded mind. And he goes through the guarded, protected, and like that. The mind travels far, wanders alone, incorporeal, self-sheltered. Those who restrain it will be freed from Mara's bonds. We've been discussing on our retreat how difficult it is to see the mind, and how if the mind is really most easily able to be seen in terms of what the mind does. So if the mind is directing awareness towards an object, then you can see the object either having a steady awareness or an unsteady awareness of the object. And then with that, you can read into the nature of the mind. Or if the mind is struck by feeling, and then the mind could be sharply activated to reach for something that seems to be pleasant. And so when you can see the mind, all of a sudden, some thought or something has come into the mind, and all of a sudden thoughts start pondering about that delightful thing, and imagining getting that delightful thing. You can see that then the mind has been touched by a pleasant feeling. And so with that activity, you can see with the aspects of the mind, you can see the nature of the mind. You can see through perception what the mind is doing with perception, or you can see with intention what the nature of the mind as forming of volition, forming intentions. I often have noticed that sometimes a situation can be sort of like unclear and uncertain, and then there can be a sort of a moment when, like, the light bulb goes off, and I know what to do about it. And just almost, it seems like at the same moment when I know what to do about some situation, that's when I understand the situation. So understanding and volition seem to be tied together. And there is something that's very clear, that like when a volition forms, you can see, if you're sensitive, if you're watching the mind, you can see how a view takes hold and becomes crystallized, and the idea about what one should do and what one's view is. So if you say, this situation is unfair, and I have to file a complaint. So so this sutta here is also telling us here some of the mysterious aspect of the mind, being difficult to see, difficult to perceive, difficult to get a hold of, and yet giving the promise that it can be restrained. Okay, for one whose mind is unsettled, who does not understand the true Dhamma, whose clarity is disturbed, wisdom does not become complete. One whose mind is free from influences, whose mind is unafflicted, who has abandoned both merit and evil, and is alert, has no fear. So the settled quality of the mind is pointing to what especially we are developing when we develop the mind through meditation, through samadhi. We can see how the advantage and the desirability of having a settled mind, having a calm mind. And we can also see very clearly the connection between calm and wisdom, samatha and vipassana goes together. So when the mind is calm, it's possible to see more clearly. And when one sees clearly with insight, it's possible to calm down. So the two are in a synergy together. And then in this one, when the verse speaks of the mind free from influences, that's referring to the asavas or the taints, which are kind of like a pollutants, a pollution. It's a disturbing influence that's more deep and more profound than the five hindrances. So they say that learning how to control the five hindrances or to gain seclusion from the five hindrances is like knowing how to mow the lawn. And so the weeds are cut down, but then they will come back up again from the root. Even if you pull them out, there's some things that even if you pull the weeds out, you don't get the entire root, and then it comes back later in a couple of weeks. But then the asavas are deep and profound. They're associated, being freed, have destruction of the asavas is associated with nibbana. It's an epithet for nibbana. So that would be like if that persistent weed has been completely destroyed, completely uprooted, and every fragment of the root has been destroyed, so that it's not going to come back again. That's what that's referring to. At my old place, we had blackberry brambles that had gone wild, and actually, it was said that there's two approaches. One is to dig very deep and to sift through the soil with a sieve and get every little piece of the roots out and then burn them. But then another way to do it is to cut it off at the ground level so that there's no leaves, so that it's not able to get any nutriment through its leaves, and then cover it up completely with something dark and keep it covered. And then eventually the roots will die by not giving it a chance to grow. Or else they say if you just cut it off, if say it's in your lawn or something, and you don't want to, completely destroy your lawn, if you cut it off and every time it pops itself up, you immediately cut it off and don't allow it to form even one leaf to get some nutriment from the sun, then eventually you will destroy that bramble. That's an interesting metaphor for different ways that the asavas could be destroyed. But this is referring to one who is gone. This is referring to the arhat, who's free from the asavas, whose mind is beyond affliction. And punya, merit, and papa, demerit or evil. So they're no longer creating the type of karma that will either take them to heaven or take them to hell. They've gone beyond the creation of karma. Having understood that this body is like a clay pot, meaning it breaks up very easily. Having fortified the mind like a city, city is much more durable if you've got a stout walls around the city, guarded, well guarded with the guard of mindfulness. That is so well fortified that not even a cat can sneak in through the city walls. That the only way they can get in is through the gates of the senses, and then mindfulness is guarding those gates. That's like a fortified city, and so being like that, you may combat Mara using wisdom as one's weapon and protect the victory. Then you can be free of any abode. Truly homeless, not clinging to anything. Before long, this body will lie on the ground, discarded and devoid of consciousness, like a useless log. This is one of the most popular verses in the Pali Canon. It would be good to learn. Everybody should memorize it in Pali. So when there's a funeral, you can chant Achiram Vatayan Kayo Pataving Adise Sati Chundho Apeta Vinyano Niratang Vakalingaram. So this contemplation of the impermanence of the body is not only about the meat part of this body, but it's this person, whoever you think you are, as a person who's has a living body endowed with the six senses and endowed with a mind. All of that together is the kaya. We've been discussing that. And so you know that this particular combination of the living flesh, the senses, and the mind is impermanent and is going to be broken. It will become the body, the meat part will be discarded and devoid of consciousness. Compared to what might be done by an enemy to an enemy, or one hostile person to another, a wrongly directed mind can cause even more harm than that. Compared to what may be done by a mother or a father or any other relative, a rightly directed mind can bring even more benefit than that. So this is the promise of happiness coming from a well-directed mind. I'm going to give you a bonus sutta. This is in the Anguttara Nikaya, and it's about patience. The reason, actually, that when I was searching around for the suttas to read, I was having the feeling that the practice that we do when we're practicing Chittanupasana, the mindful contemplation of the mind, we have to be so patient. We really have to be calm and not allow irritation or aversion or disappointment or upset or anything like that, or self-judgment to cause us to lose hope or lose the process, because the mind is so slippery and so tricky and thrashes about like a fish. So then You can't just, treat it like a well-trained dog and say, sit, and then, the mind will just be calm. No, it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you can't control the mind, but eventually you can, with a lot of patience. Here, this is for your reference. It's in the fours, number 164. Mendicants, there are 4 ways of practice. What 4? Impatient practice, patient practice, taming practice, and calming practice. What's the impatient practice? It's when someone abuses, annoys, or argues with you, and you abuse, annoy, or argue right back at them. This is called the impatient practice. And I'm going to include in this your inner dialogue if you abuse your own self. Don't do that. Don't do either one. That's the impatient practice. What's the patient practice? It's when someone abuses, annoys, or argues with you, and you don't abuse, annoy, or argue back at them. This is called the patient practice. So, don't abuse yourself. This reminds me of the Ajahn Chah story. Somebody was complaining about the music in the village that was disturbing them during the meditation. Do you remember Ajahn Chah's comment about that? He said, "You're disturbing the noise. The noise is not disturbing you. You're disturbing the noise." So it's like abusing yourself, annoying yourself when you come carried away with restlessness. Okay, now what's the taming practice? When a mendicant sees a sight with their eyes, they don't get caught up in the features and details. If the faculty of sight were left unrestrained, bad, unskillful qualities of covetousness and displeasure would become overwhelming. For this reason, they practice restraint, protecting the faculty of sight and achieving restraint over it. And likewise, when they hear a sound with the ears, when they smell an odor with the nose, when they taste a flavor with their tongue, when they feel a touch with their body, and when they know an idea with their mind, they don't get caught up in the features and details. If the faculty of mind were left unrestrained, bad, unskillful qualities of covetousness and displeasure would become overwhelming. For this reason, they practice restraint, protecting the faculty of mind and achieving restraint over it. We can see here that this is the aspect of mindfulness, which is not only in the non-judgmental, open-minded way, observing and watching what's going on with the mind, the feelings, and the body. But in this case, the mind is seeing very clearly what's going on with the mind and the senses and the body for the purpose of enabling the restraint of the senses. Because you wouldn't restrain the senses if you didn't realize what was going on within you. So it's the mindfulness, the self-observation, the developing the foundations of mindfulness and being able to see very easily, be able to recognize a mind affected by anger, a mind affected by greed, a mind which is deluded, a mind which is scattered, a mind which is constricted, a small mind or a narrow mind, a mind that's surpassable, a mind that's not liberated. So you can learn how to discern and recognize those different states of mind, and once you've learned them, then you'll be observing the origin and cessation of those states. And when you're seeing the origin, you're seeing the source, the cause, where it's coming from. So you could see a mind affected by hatred, for example, and you see, okay, what's the cause? It was an odor with the nose that touched the sense, and that caused hatred to arise. And then you can exercise that restraint right there on the spot, so that the odor becomes just an odor and doesn't need to become the trigger that would bring up a conflagration of hatred that then settles down and sort of sticks in the mind. Yeah. So that's the taming practice. So when you read the other sutta about the one thing amongst the mind which is tamed, when you do the grammar, that's the first exercise in the first chapter in our grammar book, the Garen Karunatilake, new course in reading Pali. That grammar is funny because the one sentence occupies the entire paragraph, and it's quite a long paragraph. But when you see it, when you see about tamed, the mind which is tamed, okay, remember, a tamed mind knows how to guard the senses. A tamed mind knows how to guard. Remember that. So then we have the calming practice. It's when a mendicant doesn't tolerate a sensual, malicious, or cruel thought. They don't tolerate any bad, unskillful qualities that have arisen, but they give them up, get rid of them, calm them, eliminate them, and obliterate them. This is called the calming practice. So the taming practice is more involved in maybe possibly in preventing, or if some negativity comes along, nip it in the bud. And then this calming practice, okay, it's different, but at least this is unskillful thought has come along. And if you know this, you wouldn't misunderstand mindfulness or sati to mean that when an unskillful, harmful, toxic, poison thought comes into your mind, that you should just observe it. Instead, you should take care of it. This seems a little bit rough advice that get rid of it, eliminate it, obliterate it. But actually, it doesn't. This is always. We have to remember. There's also kindness, loving kindness, for our own self and for everybody. So even if it's necessary to use an extreme method to obliterate that unskillful thought, even if you have to become intolerant and wag your finger at that thought and bring up some kind of strong energy against that thought, nevertheless, you still are doing it out of a sense of kindness and compassion. So you could say this particular practice is maybe associated with tough love, that would not, it's directed towards vitaka, the thought. So it's not harming the mind, but it is eliminating the unskillful vitakas, unskillful thoughts. These are the 4 ways of practice. So I give you that because that Cittavagga was so wonderful and poetic and inspiring. But this second sutta is very practical. If you want to know that the mind is thrashing around like a fish out of water, what to do? Okay, so these are the practical steps showing what to do. So I'll come to the questions. Welcome, Ryan, Sudha, Bhumika, Janadal, Gregory. Sudha asks, so is merit also equally bad? So merit is not equally bad with demerit. As you climb the ladder, you need merits at the beginning of the path, but then when you come to the very end, you have to let go of merits. So a fully enlightened Buddha, even though he spends 50 years altogether making so much effort, going across the country out of compassion, teaching, explaining, and pointing out the Dhamma so that people can gain liberation, still he's not doing that to gain merits. He's not doing it because he wants happiness. He's gone. So merit is a sort of a double-edged sword. Merit is wholesome and necessary at the beginning stages of the path for one who is not yet enlightened. But there is a danger in merit that a person who is, if their practice only goes up to doing merits, then they are still subjected to what's called bhava tanha, the craving for existence, and that's particularly the craving for a heavenly existence. So if a person is living their life because they want to be with the gods in heaven, they could have a beautiful life. I know a lot of people who are not Buddhists who live this way, and they want to be with God in heaven. They want to be with Jesus in heaven. And they're wonderful, wonderful people, so loving, so good, so kind. And they do a lot of merits with that intention of heaven. But when we do merits, if we're Buddhists, if we've got a glimpse of the true meaning of that heaven is still part of the round of samsara, and we want to gain liberation from the round of samsara, then when we do merits, our wish ought to be that may these meritorious deeds support my practice on the Eightfold Path, so that I will be able to gain calm and insight, and eventually to go beyond merit and demerit. And then if I do the practice with those ideas, if I'm a stream winner, if I understand the nature of non-self, and if we've had a glimpse of what it would be to get off the run of samsara, and then we go on ahead through our life doing a lot of meritorious deeds, then it might be, if we don't become enlightened in this lifetime, we would be reborn in a heavenly realm, and then from that heavenly realm we can be reborn, or we can be not reborn, but we can obtain enlightenment from heaven. But there's other kinds of people that never heard the Dhamma, never got the idea about impermanence and non-self and dukkha. They never understood the dukkha of the round, and they have a false delusion that there's an eternal life in heaven. And so there's like two different kinds of Brahma beings in the heavenly realm. One kind are the disciples of the Buddha, and the other kind are not the disciples of the Buddha. And I read somewhere that the ones who are not the disciples of the Buddha don't even see the ones who are the disciples of the Buddha. So they're sort of the same realm, but so in any case, the Brahma Viharas is exactly so. Okay, so that's a different kind of question. Okay, I'll come over to Ryan. In right effort, what is the practice to prevent unwholesome mental states, please? Guarding the senses. Guarding the senses is the primary practice to prevent unwholesome mental states. There can be some other practices. So, in fact, if a person has straightened out their sila and is practicing the Brahma Viharas, and if they are living where the mind is full of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, because that's the practice that they do, and that becomes the dominant factor and feature of their minds, then that would block out a lot of unwholesome states from coming in. So that's another method. It's a kind of like a preemptive substitution, is that you keep yourself with doing good. But the danger with that is, like something happens, and if you're subjected to some extremely stressful situation, you might lose your mindfulness and lose your temper, and fall into being disturbed again, and so you're not finally completely safe because of that. But it's all of these good practices create a room for wisdom to grow. Also, wisdom is the final permanent protection from the unwholesome states of mind. The stages of awakening are the permanent protection from unwholesome states of mind. For one who's become a once returner, greed and hatred are drastically diminished. And for one who's become a non-returner, greed and hatred are completely prevented. But the realistic way, the most common teaching I see in connection to prevention is guarding the senses. John Nadal, I would like to know if it is normal to feel tension when starting to meditate. Is there a regimen to follow to gain peace gradually? Yes, it can be. Usually whatever situation you have during the day tends to come into the meditation session. So then there are several practices that can be done throughout the day to bring mental relaxation. One danger is the danger of perfectionism. And we're so busy with so many different kinds of tasks. When you complete doing some kind of task or job or something that you need to do during the day, even if it's not completely finished to perfection, even if you're only able to do part of the job within the time that you have available, when you come to the end of working on that one thing, if you very clearly put this down, acknowledge that you've done your best, you've done as much as you can on that chore, and put it down and leave it, and then go to the next thing, so that you're not carrying a lot of sort of worry and remorse about all of the unfinished work that you've not yet accomplished. That's an example. Having a balanced life is also something that reduces stress. Doing what you can to look after your physical health and having some physical activity during the day, some stretching and yoga and so forth, also helps to calm. But then when starting to meditate, I find it the most useful. I have the routine that I go for is first, I let go of all of the excitement of the day. I just make the intention, all those, I put them to the side. During this hour, my only job is to be aware of what's arising in the present moment. And then I methodically scan through the body, and any tension, like a muscle tension or a joint tension or pain in the joints or something like that, relax. So I do that physical relaxing. And when I settle the posture, I try to get into a posture that's very comfortable as possible in meditation, and stable, so that I won't need to be wiggling around. And then have the thought, just like the body is settled and relaxed, let the mind be settled and relaxed. And then start the meditation. And then if any kind of restlessness comes up, consciously, I even talk to myself to relaxing around it. So even if there could be that there's some tension, like I'm worried about something, or I've got a pain or something, so I've either got a pain in my body or a pain in the mind. But even though the pain is still there, I can relax around it. I can bring gentleness and compassion to that situation, even though it's not really comfortable. So that's my suggestion about that. How does one brighten the mind that is in sloth or has a lot of hindrance, so that one has motivation to practice? Sloth and torpor could be just the result of being physically exhausted, or mentally in a stressful situation, like something about the work or the social situation is stressful. And so having enough rest is actually a preemptive way for sloth and torpor. But then there's another way. There can be that, like, look at the origination. Where is this laziness coming from? And a lot of times the hindrances are sort of like a Chinese box, a Chinese dolls. If you look underneath, you find something else, and you look underneath, you find something else. And it's not always the same, and it's not always the same for everybody. So sometimes, like a person could notice they feel sleepy, but if they look underneath that, they're angry. And it's just like holding a grudge is like so exhausting. And so if they took care of the anger, that like releases their energy. Or else, some other aspect. If someone has the belief that they're not going to be successful with meditation, that's like a lack of confidence in oneself, or this practice that could like manifest as sloth. So you've kind of got to try to look underneath it and see where it comes from. One practice that I find the best in my life, from the age of 19 until the age of 50, I went to work from 9 to 5, almost, except for my 2 weeks vacation. That was just what I did. And so there was something that's a pretty deep habit of getting up, managing to get up and get it together in time to get to the office. And then once being at the office, saying, okay, time to work. And for me, if I have a chore to do, if I get up in the morning and I go do my chore, it's the most comfortable, natural, normal thing in life because I'm so used to it. So it's a very strong habit of working. So then to get out of that sloth, if I imagine that the meditation is like going to the office, and I imagine just the energy that I had for so many years, I had enough energy to go up and do that work. And meditating is in some ways easier or similar, but just remember what energy is and bring that energy. Remember spiritual urgency and bring energy. You should be afraid that you might die tomorrow and you forgot to get enlightened. And so then you should bring the energy. The role of the Brahma Viharas in Samadhi practice. So the Brahma Viharas is given in 2 different ways in different suttas. In some cases, the Brahma Viharas is described as coming before mindfulness. The Brahma Viharas, in a way, it arises very naturally out of the Sila. Because why? When you say, I'm going to not kill, well, why not? Because it would hurt them, and so like underneath all of the precepts of morality are the wish not to harm, the wish for the very tender, beautiful, active motivation for the welfare and happiness of beings, including oneself. And so the Brahma Viharas then it feeds and supports and reinforces the sila. It makes the sila become natural, beautiful, and uplifting, so that your sila becomes a thing of joy instead of being, some rules and regulations that's like a cage that's stopping you from something. And then practicing the Brahma Vihara meditation is one of the ways to enter into samadhi, to enter into tranquility. And that practice is very much supported by mindfulness, because while you hold the thought of loving kindness, you may use your mindfulness to become aware of the feeling connected with mindfulness. You may use your mindfulness of the mind to become aware of the exalted state of the mind, which is in the Brahma Viharas. And so if you're practicing loving kindness, and then you're doing it with mindfulness, with mindful awareness, so you know what you're doing, then that's what gives it more power, so that it then is able to create this situation where one is secluded from unwholesome states of mind, and then very naturally and normally enters into samadhi. And a continuation of this question: is it true that the Buddha abided in Brahma Viharas most of the time during the span of his ministry, or did he practice anapanasati mostly, please? I believe actually the Buddha did a lot of different practices. The Buddha practiced, there's one practice that's unique to a Buddha, which is called Nirodha Samapatti, which is where the Arahant is completely secluded from sensations of consciousness. It's the Buddha said that he frequently would dwell in that state as a pleasant abiding, a very refreshing abiding. And then we see the description at his parinibbana, where the Buddha went up and down the different levels of jhana. And the Buddha spoke of the anapanasati as being a very desirable and beautiful practice for all monks, including those who are arahants. So the gods in the Brahma realm abide in the Brahma Viharas all the time. So I don't remember the Brahma Viharas as being a practice that the Buddha personally practiced more so than jhana or anapanasati, or that Nirodha Samapatti. That's sometimes it's called the ninth. It's in shorthand, it's called the ninth jhana, but that's the cessation of feeling and perception. Another very good question, Ryan. Where in the suttas does it say that metta can only take you to the first jhana and not to all 8 jhanas, please? You will find that in the Path of Purification by Buddhaghosa. And the theory is that while you're practicing the Brahma Viharas, you have the thought of loving kindness. And so the first jhana is accompanied by applied thought and sustained thought. And so it's for that reason that the commentary particularly associates metta with the first jhana. So yeah. It's not a ninth jhana. There's 4 jhanas, and then there's 4 immaterial attainments, and then there's the state of neither perception or non-perception, and that one is in modern times by some modern teachers who are not speaking very carefully. It's sometimes called the ninth jhana, but it's not called that anywhere in the suttas. But if you look up neither perception nor non-perception, you can find some descriptions about that. Or Nirodha Samapatti. Okay, so that's all the questions that I have on the screen. And is there a question here?
About the guarded mind and the trained mind.
The question is to review about the guarded mind and the trained mind. So the guarded mind in that sutta is directed towards being quite sensitive to the sense gates and I could add the feeling that arises from that, and guarding to protect the proliferation of thoughts from coming up, so that then an idea or a visible object or a smell strikes the sense, but then there's a feeling that arises about that, and then right after that, it's the guarding is preventing unwholesome thoughts from arising. And I would say further that it has to do with what kind of perception it comes about. So if by guarding the senses, you create the habits so that wholesome perceptions come about, namely perceptions like this is impermanent, it's impersonal, it's got the nature of dukkha, and those kind of perceptions protect against then the unwholesome perceptions are, I want it, I don't want it, I like it, I don't like it, this is good for me, this is bad for me. That's what you're guarding against. And then the taming the mind is if the guard was asleep on the switch and unwholesome thought comes in, I like it, I don't like it, I want it, I don't want it, this is good for me, this is bad for me. Once those thoughts come in, then the taming the mind is, and I like to use the language that you take care of those thoughts by calming them, getting those thoughts to calming the mind, getting the minds to calm down. So that's the calming the mind to the until they calm down, until they disappear, or else, depending on the urgency of the situation, you may cut them off sharply. Okay, so I think that's enough for tonight. Thank you for your patient listening. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.